My boss looked straight at me in the middle of the meeting and said, "Let's be honest. Anyone here could replace her." A few people laughed quietly. I stayed silent. Because 10 minutes later, the entire company system crashed. And suddenly, the same boss who called me replaceable was begging me to fix it. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and for 3 years I worked as a systems engineer at one of the fastest growing tech companies in the city. It was the kind of company that loved big words like innovation, teamwork, and future. But behind the glass walls and expensive offices, things worked very differently, especially under my boss, Mark Reynolds. Mark had a reputation in the company. He was loud, confident, and loved taking credit for other people's work. At first, I tried to ignore it. After all, my job was simple: build and maintain the system that ran most of the company's operations. Orders, client data, analytics, internal communications, everything depended on the infrastructure my team built. Most people didn't understand how complicated it was, and honestly, that was fine with me. I preferred quiet work over office politics. But Mark preferred the opposite. He loved meetings, big presentations, standing in front of executives talking about his team's incredible systems. Except, those systems were mostly built by me. One morning, Mark called for an important meeting with senior management. The company was preparing to sign a huge contract with a new corporate client. If everything worked smoothly, the deal would bring in hundreds of millions of dollars over the next few years. The executives wanted to make sure the system could handle the scale. So Mark invited everyone to the conference room. Executives, department heads, even the CEO joined the call remotely. I sat quietly near the end of the table with my laptop. The system dashboard was open in front of me. Mark began his presentation confidently. "Our infrastructure is rock solid," he said. "No risk of downtime." He clicked through slides filled with charts and technical diagrams, slides I had made. Then one executive asked a question. "What happens if the system fails during peak traffic?" Mark laughed. "A failure is extremely unlikely," he said. "But even if something happens, our engineers can handle it." Then he glanced toward me and said the sentence that changed everything. "Honestly, anyone here could replace her." A few people smiled. Someone chuckled. Mark continued speaking like it was nothing, but inside my chest, something shifted. Not anger, just clarity. The thing Mark didn't understand was how fragile complex systems really are. Not fragile because they're poorly built, but because they require constant attention. Over the past 3 years, I had built dozens of small tools and safeguards inside the system. Automations, emergency scripts, hidden fixes, things no one else in the company even knew existed. Without them, the system would still work. For a while. But under extreme pressure, it would collapse. And that day, extreme pressure was coming. The new corporate client planned to run a massive live test later that afternoon. Millions of data requests would hit the servers simultaneously. The system could handle it. I had designed it that way, but only if all the monitoring tools were active, and the person who managed those tools was me. Around 3 p.m., the test began. The office was buzzing with excitement. Executives gathered around screens watching real-time data. At first, everything looked perfect. Traffic increased. Servers responded quickly. Orders processed smoothly. Mark walked around proudly, shaking hands with managers. "This is what world-class infrastructure looks like," he said. Then, something changed. One server cluster slowed down. Then, another. Error messages started appearing. At first, They were small. Then suddenly the system dashboard turned red. Completely red. Orders stopped processing. Client portals froze. Internal communication tools went offline. Within seconds, the entire office filled with confused voices. What's happening? Why are the servers failing? Why is everything down? Mark stared at the screen in shock. His confident smile disappeared instantly. Within minutes, the executives gathered in the operations room. The CEO joined the emergency call. Everyone was talking at once. Mark tried to sound calm. Just a temporary issue, he said. My team is investigating. But no one on the team knew what to do. They looked at the code, restarted servers, checked logs. Nothing worked, because the automated monitoring system, the one that stabilized traffic spikes, wasn't active. And only one person knew how to activate it. Me. Mark finally looked across the room, right at me. For the first time all day. He seemed nervous. Sarah, he said slowly, do you see what's happening here? I turned my laptop screen toward him. The system errors were spreading rapidly. Another cluster went offline. Client transactions started failing. Millions of dollars were now at risk. The CEO's voice came through the speaker. How long until the system is restored? The room went silent. Mark swallowed. Then he said something very different from earlier. Sarah, can you take a look? I walked to the main console calmly. Everyone watched. Executives, managers, even the CEO listening on the call. For a moment, I just looked at the system logs. Exactly as I expected. Traffic overload, server imbalance, monitoring failure. A fix existed, but I didn't rush. Instead, I looked at Mark and quietly said something he probably never expected. I thought anyone here could replace me. The room went completely silent. Mark's face turned pale. No, that's not what I meant earlier, he said quickly. We just need your help right now. I typed a few commands, activated the monitoring system, balanced the traffic across servers. Within 2 minutes, the system began stabilizing. Error messages disappeared. Orders started processing again. The red dashboard slowly turned green. The office filled with relieved voices. Applause even started from one corner of the room. But the CEO didn't sound relieved. He sounded curious. What exactly caused the failure, he asked. I explained calmly. The monitoring automation system wasn't active. Without it, traffic spikes overloaded the infrastructure. One executive asked an important question. Why wasn't it active? I answered honestly. Because the engineer responsible for it wasn't included in the planning process. Everyone understood what that meant. Slowly, all eyes turned toward Mark. The same man who said I was replaceable just hours earlier. 2 weeks later, the company leadership made several changes. Mark was moved out of his leadership position. Officially, it was called a department restructuring, but everyone knew why it happened. As for me, I was offered something unexpected, a promotion. This time, I would lead the entire infrastructure division, and every major system decision would go through me. Sometimes I still think about that meeting, the moment when my boss said anyone could replace me. Maybe he believed it. Maybe he just wanted to look powerful in front of executives. But 10 minutes later, the system proved something he never understood. Some people don't need to argue to prove their value. Sometimes, the system speaks for them.